Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
What's up, guys?
Well, what's happening? Did we survive July the 4th?
Yeah, we did.
All of our fingers intact?
All the fireworks going
Well,
off.
there wasn't that many fireworks. This Build Back Better plan by Joe Biden, people can't even afford fireworks. Usually in our area, you get them a couple of days before, a couple of days after.
Yeah.
We only had about an hour on July the 4th, and that was it. We didn't hear anything else.
Really?
So I'm not even sure people can afford fireworks right now.
Well, they're expensive. I've always thought they were overpriced to begin with.
Yeah.
The amount of money people put out for that,
Yeah, it's
it's
fun,
incredible. But, nothing like, back in the day when they had bottle rockets and
Oh, yeah.
Bottle rocket wars.
Yeah, I used to shoot them out. Once we'd emptied a Roman candle, then we'd use that as as like a little silo type thing to start shooting them at people. And one street versus the next, and it was a war zone. Smoke everywhere.
Man.
Yeah, it was great. We had a good time.
Yes.
Those
were the days.
That was the good old days. They even had BB gun wars back then too.
Oh, there you go.
So I got shot by BB guns and
Yep.
yeah. Kind of stupid stuff, but
Real stupid stuff.
I guess it was the back in the days of lawn darts and
Yeah.
everything else.
Right.
So I don't know.
Lawn darts was actually kind of fun.
Yeah, it was. I guess too many people were getting stuck.
Well, people got stupid.
Well.
Yeah, so throwing them at each other.
Yep.
Yeah, I realized how dangerous that was, but yeah. Oh yeah, it was I did a lot of that when
I'm sorry. I think those things should be allowed back. Remove the warning labels and just let shit happen and kind of clean out some of the dumb people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, be a lot of kids getting hurt.
Yeah. I had during New Year's a lot of times I had a friend whose uncle had a bunch of farmland, and we would buy a bunch of fireworks, and we would get like PVC pipes, and we would like hammer them into the ground like a pretty good ways. It was probably after we hammered them down, it's probably like 3 feet high, and we would like drop artillery shells in the. It was so much fun.
Farmland, y'all didn't go around and pull off the mushrooms off the cow patch.
No. There was a fence behind. Where
okay,
yeah,
sure. All right,
yeah.
All right. Well, just checking out because
Oh yeah,
that was fun. I remember those farmers like, get away from these cow patties.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But this year I just went out to dinner with some friends. We just kind of all hung out for a while. It was a lot of fun. So nothing too crazy.
Yeah, it was hot out there.
Oh yeah, it was.
It's going to be a hot summer.
Yeah,
it really is. It's already
we've had like a
high triple-digit heat.
Yeah.
And it's just brutal out there. It's just the older I've gotten, the hotter it is.
I bet.
With this heat. I just can't.
Yeah. There's a lot of older people that I know that are saying because of all the humidity as well.
It's the humidity.
It's so hard to breathe.
It's the humidity. It's not so much the heat because hot is hot, but if you could breathe.
Yes. The humidity is what makes it hard for people.
It makes it hard. It's like a wet bulb.
Yep.
Well,
there was a lady on I think Instagram or Facebook, I can't remember. She was talking about it's 93 degrees in a thunderstorm. What the fuck am I supposed to wear? A thong and rain boots?
Exactly.
Well, it's like that when I lived in Aspen for a little while. I came home on Christmas. I may have told this story, and please forgive me if I have. I got on the plane in Aspen on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
and
I think
was
you have.
flying home, and it was -8, -11 in Aspen. And I get off the plane in New Orleans, and it's 85 with 100% humidity. Well, the humidity in Aspen was 17%.
Yep.
So I get off the plane, it's like hitting just a brick wall. Pop! Oh my God! And all I had brought was cold stuff, and that was just miserable.
I bet. God, and I bet that was in wintertime as well.
Or Christmas Eve.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
yeah, it was Christmas Eve.
That's wild.
So, yep.
I believe that.
Well,
I
think we have a good topic tonight.
We have. I will say this has probably been there's been a couple of topics we've held on to for a pretty extensive, a portion of time where we were trying to figure out how to, how to refine it down to, what do we actually want to talk about, so we've had a couple of topics we've held on to for some time.
Well, originally we were trying to get X-Man back too for this.
I know,
because we all had to agree to read a book,
right?
Yeah,
and he agreed, but just logistics, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
I'd have loved to have him in this one.
But I would wager that this is one of the topics we've held on to for
the longest
time.
Well, we've had other topics that kind of touched on this.
A cousin.
Yeah.
Cousin topic.
So it's, you're getting into the realm of ancient civilizations and
Ancient
aliens, and of course now with the whole, ancient alien thing, it's pretty mainstream now.
Right.
So
Well, the author of the book that we read was kind of the original to some of this ancient alien and civilization stuff. He kind of started it back in, I think, 1968 when he wrote the first book.
right.
And the title is Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. It was one of the first books that I read. There was two books that I read that really affected me, and it was Chariots of the Gods and My Side of the Mountain. And this one I just love this book, and some of his other books after were just so interesting because he was kind of the first one to delve into that,
Right.
and really push the topic, not just lightly. He said, okay, this, and this.
Believe it or not, the actually book was actually it was another name before
Yes,
this.
it was.
It was Memories of the Future, and it was renamed by the British publication company Souvenir Press, and 600,000 copies.
Mm-hmm.
It's done well.
I have 4 of those.
Yeah, there you go.
So they said 2 years after it was published, a film was released by the same name. I don't remember seeing that one. Stoney, do you?
Yes,
Probably
I do.
you remember that one.
Long time ago.
Right, and it was in 1970. It came out. It sold in 28 languages and published in 36 countries.
Wow.
So, it's a this topic has now been taken up by others.
Right.
Graham Hancock being one of your favorites.
Well, Graham, I was kind of looking as I was reading or listening. I actually audiobook this.
Yeah.
So I listened to it twice. And Däniken is more into that mankind actually had assistance from alien visitation.
Right.
Versus, I have not really picked that up from Graham Hancock.
Yeah.
Graham is more of the, I think that just humankind
Has been here a long time.
has just been here a long time and is advanced, had a somewhat sophisticated civilization at some point in the future. I mean, in the past, and was wiped out in the tumultuous period called the Younger Dryas, and all modern societies are basically reboots.
Right.
Now I know Däniken really touched on the idea of cycles. Mm-hmm. I know he was big on that.
Which we have delved into a little bit.
Yes,
here.
we have.
Yes, we have.
So I enjoyed the book. I really did. Now, some of the information in there, it's a bit dated. As I said, this was 1968 when this book came out.
Right.
So we've got some time that is, some things have come to be, and some of his predictions, or what he thought would happen, didn't really happen. But just some points that, some of the backdrop of why he felt the way he felt. And,
Right.
I've kind of understood he was actually raised in a Jesuit school.
Mm-hmm.
He was very much a strong Catholic, a strong believer in God, and he still is, according to him, a strong believer in God. He never found some of the explanations satisfactory as to the course of human civilization. And so he felt like there was other things out there that may have given humankind a boost in the past. This is where you'll get talk of hybrid engineering, DNA, mixing of alien DNA with human DNA to produce what we are today. But some of the kind of the backdrop of why Däniken even kind of why he was not satisfied with the answers given to him.
I have a question before we go too much further on this. I'm kind of the one who brought this to the table,
right,
so to speak. And as much, Jason, as you like the ancient civilization and the ancient alien talks, and Ian, you kind of delve into it too. Did you enjoy the book, considering that it was the precursor to a lot of this? Did you enjoy going through the book? Was it?
Well, a lot of the things I can sympathize with him. Mm-hmm. I really am. This topic can be quite disconcerting to a religious-minded individual because it does challenge some of the preconceived notions of our place in the universe, the notion of God, us being Christians, the idea of Jesus Christ. And if for a lot of people, that line that you walk is narrow, considering the evidence that has come out that our reality may be a little bit more nuanced than what I think a lot of people are comfortable in going to.
Right.
And so when you get in the idea that, mankind has been here for, a long time and, aliens and aliens, coming in and breeding with humans, now you're kind of understanding the backdrop of some of the idea of, we're all familiar with the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
We all understand in the current Old Testament, in the book of Numbers, and they talk about the giants.
Yeah.
The supposedly the offspring of human women and divine beings. Some of this language, it's kind of hearkening to this idea of, did an alien species that's more advanced than us that would be considered gods?
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, to primitive people, they would be
gods.
gods.
Been gods. That's right.
If you're coming down here on a spaceship and you're running around with clubs and dancing around a fire, I would think there's probably, you look at that and go, they've got fantastic weapons and they can travel at great speeds and leave this world. Yeah, they would be considered gods. So. But Däniken, just kind of some things here I found that I thought were very interesting. So there's an estimated about 4,500 stars that can be seen with the naked eye. With a telescope, that goes up to 2 million that are visible. A modern reflecting telescope brings the light from thousands of millions more to the viewer. But in the colossal dimensions of the cosmos, our stellar system is only a tiny part of an incomparably larger stellar system. In our galaxy, so the Milky Way galaxy, 18,000 planets that are similar to Earth.
Yep.
2 million different species of living creatures live on planet Earth. The idea that life can only exist and develop on a planet like Earth is no longer true.
Mm-hmm. But boy, our episode on the Great Filter comes into play too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but this is what Däniken was looking at,
right?
When trying to kind of understand this idea of how vast our cosmos is. It took 400,000 years to reach our present state and stature.
Right.
No one can produce any concrete proof that on another planet that other things didn't evolve over time. We don't know. We've never supposedly, there's no evidence of extraterrestrial. I doubt that seriously. I personally think we have been visited. I'm a firm believer that there is extraterrestrial life. There's too much out there for it to just be denied. So kind of taking that as a backdrop, this is the world Däniken was trying to make sense of, and where does humankind fall in this?
But he also did it looking through ancient texts and scriptures. That was kind of his first thing. He went through the Bible. He went through many different scriptures, and like you said earlier a little bit, when they talk about the giants, and he started, and I think that being his first, oh wow, here's my questions now, because he was very intelligent. If you ever watched him in interviews and things like that, the guy was sharp. It's sometimes a little bit hard to listen to with his accent.
I believe he's Swedish.
Yeah. But he was sharp. And so you could see where all these questions just started popping into his head. And then so when you start moving from the text and scriptures, then he started looking at some of the things that were left behind. What was that, the little computer and Anacathera thing, mechanism that they found that they believed to be an old computer? He started seeing things like that and realizing that man didn't have the technology back then to build something like that. The Greeks, I think it was a Greek thing.
Yeah.
And so, the Baghdad battery. Okay. Now, this is back, Baghdad, the pyramids, they found batteries in the pyramids. Was that used for gold plating, or as Tesla thought, was it a power source? Were the pyramids a power source for something? And so all these, you can just see where all this questioning started popping into his head, and then add that to myths and legends. And he started running with it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you mentioned he went into the Bible. There are a lot of things in the book of Ezekiel that would give the impression that to an ancient people trying to describe a spaceship, with stuff coming out of it. I could see them saying it was a chariot of fire.
Well, they said that's how Jesus is going to come back. He's going to come back in a chariot, and this time he's going to kick some butt, though. And so they start putting all this together, and when you see something coming out of the sky with all the lights, and we know them to be lights. To them, that could have just been fire.
Right. They don't know that. So that's what I'm saying is they're trying to make sense of very strange and difficult things. It would be like how you would think a tribe in the Amazon that's never seen any modern convenience.
Right. You look at a flashlight and it's like, oh, he's able to harness fire in his hand.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, but he was also one of the first people that pushed and really urged you to go back and reevaluate. And we've done this on this show, talking about the Sphinx and things like that. Okay, the Egyptians say they built the pyramids and they did this, and they've done it within 2,000 to 4,000 years. But then you come back and you look at it, and there's these erosion marks in it that put it at 15,000 years back. But he was really kind of the first one that pushed us to kind of rethink things and have a bigger open mind about what we find when we start reevaluating this, because he really wanted us to push these boundaries and re-look at all of this stuff. So that's what I got out of his book. It was kind of fun because he was just kind of pushing us to rethink and re-look at this.
I'm Dan Heath. On the What It's Like to Be podcast, I ask folks about their jobs, like what keeps a TV meteorologist up at night.
When I'm at work and there's a tornado coming into town, my husband and my kids have to get into the tornado shelter without me.
What keeps a welder driven?
I never am satisfied. I always know I can do better.
And what keeps a hairstylist on her toes?
I know she likes that Halle Berry haircut, but she doesn't look like Halle Berry.
Find out on What It's Like to Be, wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, I mean, we know when you start, that's what I'm saying. Once you start going there,
Yeah.
you know, it's going to challenge a lot of deeply held beliefs. I know I've got, you know, parents that get really nervous about that kind of stuff, and it's
Right.
you know, I am kind of the opinion that I as I've said, that I do believe that our physical reality, we haven't even scratched the surface
Right.
of our own just physical reality. That there's a lot more there. I've seen too much. I've read too much. There's too much coming out on the TV now, on just legit news. I mean, the White House is having hearings on UFOs. Mm-hmm. Who would have ever thought? I mean, you have to go back to Project Blue Book to even get anywhere near that.
That's an episode I'd like to do, is one just on.
Yeah, well, I mean, and
Blue Book.
supposedly they said there was no evidence of it. I mean, now all of a sudden, now there is evidence because it's all over the place. Everybody's got a camera now. Everybody's recording this. So either everybody's crazy, or they can't make it. They can't tell the difference between a weather balloon and a helicopter. Which, you know, to me, the idea, well, it was a weather balloon. No, it's not a weather balloon. Something that's moving like that, that's not a weather balloon. Now, could that be stuff that our government is experimenting with? I mean, there's plenty of people out there say we've retrieved extraterrestrial tech and we've been reverse engineering it. So who's to say that?
That's right.
That might not be there, but you know, it's interesting.
Well, the Nazis had the bell. That was the possible dimensional time shift bell that they were experimenting with that disappeared. You know, so it's been going on for a long time that they've been looking at this. So I mean, you know,
I don't know what's going on. I just, you know, as I said, he was the beginning of really touching this, and I can imagine at that time when he probably started talking about this, people probably thought he was nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, you can only imagine. Yeah, he could have been a heretic. I mean, you know, for many, but I couldn't tell you what, you know, if, you know, it's good stuff. I mean,
that was my only, after.
I mean, Ian, what did you think?
After reading it, I had to like reframe my mind, knowing that it came out like in 1968, because initially, like reading it, the thing that kind of upset me was like, at least for the first few chapters, it felt like he would set up how science believes in certain things and says, but that's not true or whatever, or something to that effect, and then would like kind of come up with this like crazy hypothetical, which would like come across as like potentially accurate and would be intriguing, and then was like, but I also have no proof for it. And he did that a couple times throughout the beginning of the book, and I understand, I think now, why he probably did that. But it was just a little upsetting how I was like, there are some things, especially now in this modern world, what I believe are like scientific fact, that he was like, but that's not true. And I was like, well, but you're also not giving me any proof to the opposite. And then he would come up with this hypothetical, and I was like, okay, so like, what's your proof that kind of comes to that? And then he would be like, but I also have no real science, like concrete evidence on it to believe that that's factual either. And I'm like, I understand why he did it, but I was like, just kind of felt like we got talked in circles for a while. But then again, like I said before, knowing where he's coming from, and like you were saying before, being a person of Catholic
the
belief,
Egyptians have no real proof that they built the pyramids, and that was the point I think he was trying to make was, okay, we need to relook at this, because just because these archaeologists and scientists say it doesn't mean it's necessarily true.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is like again, especially in that time where again, I think I was about halfway through reading it whenever I had met with Jason, or we were all meeting for recording, and I had before the show I had talked to you about something, and you were like, you also have to think about it from a person who has probably been put down by the scientific community, and that also kind of reframed my thought towards him of like, the reason why he probably kind of talks against science and is a bit more, has an aggressive stance against it, is probably because obviously he's lived a lot of his life being told by modern science that he's crazy. None of it's true. So, that also kind of changes my framework. So once I kind of got that all figured out, I was like, okay, I think I'm understanding a little bit more where this author is coming from. Because at first I wasn't wholly on his side, because I was like, it just kind of felt, but I thought it was an interesting book. I do think that, it's like you said, I think it started the conversation of like, what if hypothetically things weren't as they seemed, in the beginning.
Well, a lot of the critics of von Däniken's theories are because they haven't undergone rigorous peer review.
Oh, right.
Scholars argue that his hypotheses often support empirical data. And I'm going, well, there was none to start with. He's just throwing out another idea.
Right.
And then a lot of they argued that he misinterpreted myths and texts and things like that. So,
but I do think that it's like I like the idea that it starts the conversation, like we had mentioned a couple times before, of what if prehistoric civilization that doesn't have full grasp on what technology would look like, how would they describe something? And we've had a much more in-depth conversation from other people and other authors about this kind of topic. But it was cool to see again what an interpretation would look like from 1968.
Well, I mean, he's he's like anybody else that had a moment where it's like, what I'm being told, does it make sense? There's too much around me to say we're it.
Right.
That the human race is it on little bitty planet Earth, the only planet in the solar system in our galaxy that has any sort of life, and it's only because we haven't been able to find it. So supposedly that people dismiss the idea of aliens, but I thought the book was good. As I said, you could tell it was written in 1968. A lot of things have changed. He's very heavily on what NASA and, at that time, the thinking was that NASA was going to take us to Mars and do all these other things. And what happened is basically we've kind of abdicated. The government has kind of abdicated the whole space exploration and the private sector now with Elon Musk, with SpaceX and some
Virgin
of the
guy. What's his name?
Sir Richard Branson.
Yep.
Virgin, I forget.
Galactic?
Virgin Galactic, maybe.
Or I don't know.
So I have to, what his...
It's all becoming commercial now. Hey, for $2 million, you can fly you can be an astronaut. So exploration's out now. It's just making money on it.
Yeah, Virgin Galactic Space Tourism Company.
Virgin Galactic,
Yeah, see, there's tourism company. So, wow.
Well, that's what Google considers it, a space tourism company.
But, that's where it's going. I've just said, if you think about if we would have maintained the same passion from a nation, so to speak, with the president like John F. Kennedy standing there and, on the podium and saying, we're going to get on the moon.
Well, he did that to fight the Russians.
Exactly.
That was the original Cold War. We're going to beat the Russians.
We're going to beat the
moon.
Russians, right?
And that's why America got behind him, because we were going to beat the Russians.
Can you imagine if we could have, if that would have continued? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind we'd probably already made it to Mars by now.
Oh, but also think about just the minerals and things like that we could be transporting back and forth. If America would have stayed at the forefront of the space race, so to speak, and now we wouldn't have to be relying on China for lithium and other things. What if we would have stayed on that? Wouldn't that be an interesting thought? Because this would be completely different now. But we did a couple moon runs and then we stopped because they found the transformers on the dark side of the moon.
Well, I mean, there's a lot to be said about, why did we just kind of abandon the moon? I mean,
well, there's a lot of people who say we didn't actually go. Now, I don't believe that.
No, I think
I don't believe that.
I think
there's
we went.
a lot of facts that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we went. I don't. Now, what they found on the moon might be a little different. That might be a different story. But I mean, the idea of the of aliens coming to, in essence, kickstart the human race as we know it, is very intriguing. And there are a lot of religious texts that kind of back up this idea of divine beings coming down and teaching people certain things.
Right.
So, and it's not just Christianity. There are a lot of different religions throughout the world that way back in the distant past, there's this idea of the gods coming and walking among us,
right,
and teaching us things. So, I mean, I could, anybody that's listening, that's going to be listening to this episode, if you fall in that camp that this bothers you, I urge you, take a breath and just think about it for a little bit. Set aside that automatic, I'm just shutting the door.
The bias, yeah.
And look at it from a practical standpoint. Because this to me doesn't, in any way, this has never somehow challenged my faith or made me doubt the existence of God. And,
right. I was going to talk about that kind of further down into it, because I'm the same way. It hasn't challenged I'm a huge person of faith, and it doesn't bother it at all. It doesn't make me question God. It doesn't make me anything like that. It's just what's there. How did it happen? How many times can we look just in the recorded history? Do we have these little bumps? We hit a little plateau, and then all of a sudden we shoot up, and then we hit a plateau and we shoot up. Have we gotten help? Right. I believe personally, I think we're getting help. I think we found some things. A lot of our technology today, we kind of circumvented our normal plateau with just some of the technology that we've gotten since the 50s. And that was when the aliens crash landed in Roswell. So have we backtracked? Have we reverse engineered some stuff? Have we kind of helped ourselves on that?
Well, as you know, I think there's evidence that we're getting some help, or we have retrieved some tech that's not from here. Right. And we're trying to figure it out. I mean, believe it or not, I mean, I was one of our, I think our episodes on Antarctica.
Right.
That we talked about the idea that there's aliens that live here. Yes. And we've got people actually going to off world to visit and to interact with these other civilizations. I mean, so, whether that's real, I mean, who knows? I mean, it's not going to, I don't think we're ready. I mean, I don't know how that would go over if the president, hey, we're going to have a press conference.
Yep.
And I'm going to, let you know that, yes, the United States government has been in contact with an alien civilization. How that would go down.
Yeah.
Well, one of our first episodes of this podcast was what would happen if aliens landed on the White House lawn.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great conversation. I urge people to go back and listen to that one. But what will we do spiritually, politically, economically? We're not ready for that because we like to believe that we're the center of our own universe. And I don't believe we are.
Well, I think it goes back to, I believe it was episode on Great Filter, that I felt that the minute it's known that we are not alone in this universe, that we're part of a larger community, all of a sudden, I'm no longer an American. I'm no longer a Russian. I'm no longer a Brazilian or Guatemalan or Frenchman or British. I'm a human being now.
Yep.
It completely alters the psyche of the entire world because now our differences seem very trivial.
Yep.
Very trivial. We've got people that are able to traverse the stars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about just the past in the world. At one time, you didn't think about going across the planet.
Right.
And how different was our life then and how much has it changed since now we can travel across the world? And what happens when now it's universe travel? It's going to be different when we find out that we're not alone here and that there are other people and they've been here for a long time and they've been helping us out. Is that going to hurt our ego thinking, well, we didn't really do it ourselves? Here we've been thinking we've been doing it all on our own and maybe we're not as smart as we thought we were.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be it's an interesting proposition that he puts forth. I think some of his arguments are pretty sound. I mean, I really do. Now you can interpret some of the ancient writings of different groups. Could those be interpreted wrong? Yeah,
sure.
They could be easy. I mean, it's difficult to interpret ancient documents because the cultural context in which those documents were written, I mean, it's so far gone. We don't even have even to place ourselves in the minds of those people at the time when they were writing that.
Well, even if you go to the story of Ezekiel's visions, they're often interpreted by theologians as symbolic rather than literal depiction of ancient technology. So who's gauging that? Who's judging that? You're right. It's all interpretation. It's all people just trying to, and what Däniken did here was this is his way of trying to figure this out. And I urge anybody that, and there's so much right now about ancient aliens and ancient civilizations. Go back and read this book because it'll bring you back to kind of the beginning of people thinking about this in an intelligent fashion. Because the guy's smart. I really like the book. I like his second book too. I don't remember how many books he's written, but he's written a few books.
Right.
Well, things that he talked about I've seen some of this stuff like on Ancient Aliens, which to me doesn't make any sense, and they've never really been able to explain, are these ideas of these pictures that you can only view from the sky.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How was that even done? The only way you could do that is if you had a view from
right
top down. So my question is, how did they do that? Did they have a means of going up into the sky, 10,000 years ago? I mean, it's these things are like the Nazca lines.
Mm-hmm.
the Peru. I mean, I think we've all seen those before. The Piri Reis map, you know, of showing the continents of South America and Antarctica and you know the way these places were actually showed with animals on them and not covered in ice and all this, you know, it's just it kind of boggles the mind a little bit on where did this stuff come from, and no one's ever really been able to offer a very good explanation for that. They've kind of beat around the bush on that. I know in the book, he thinks and he puts forth that, like, for example, the Nazca lines were actually built by ancient humans as a way of communicating with these aliens.
Or
as a way of landing.
Land here.
Yeah. Right.
And so, but a lot of his critics have come out and said, no, that was just ritualistic. That was just for the civilization. This is just something they're honoring something or doing this. But he tried to put it up as that it was communication or some type of a way, an invitation or something for the aliens to come and land here. But like, you're right. You know, how did they do that when you can only see it looking down?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm saying, it's, we've talked about the religion, that he's putting forth that many of the stories of the Old Testament are aliens. Mm-hmm. That's who gave rise to these ancient people interacting with these beings and how they would be viewed. You know, as I said, that we talked about the Book of Enoch. You know, the Book of Enoch goes into the idea of these divine beings came down and interbred, and they taught how to make weapons and how to do all these things. And unfortunately, it
he even talks about I think it's somewhere halfway or almost through the book. He talks about also like the Ark of the Covenant and all that stuff that people have talked about with, it being a conductor of electricity and all that kind of stuff like that. All the, the exacting specifications of how to make, the not only the Ark of the Covenant, but also the Holies of Holies. What is it called?
Yeah.
Where it was.
That was the temple.
The tabernacle.
The temple.
Like the
tabernacle.
How it was supposed to be built and all that kind of stuff.
And it was supposed to be built very exacting.
That's what I'm saying.
Exacting,
to very exact specifications.
But he also talked about one of his other books too. What you were talking about earlier was just, the genetic help that we might have gotten. In the Old Testament, people lived 600, 700, 800, 900 years old, and now we don't barely get to 100. And he was talking that maybe some of the genetic help that they got to populate the earth, and now we've polluted it, with all the interbreeding. And but what if that was aliens, inseminating the women and creating these giants and deities and gods or demigods or whatever? And,
well, in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's right.
Yep.
He talks about that was probably a nuclear.
Oh, yeah.
Some sort of massive, the idea of Lot's wife turning and she turned to a pillar of salt.
Right.
Well, she maybe looked into the fireball that you couldn't.
Yeah.
And she basically turned to ash for all intents and purposes. So, I mean, where do you go with this stuff? I don't know. It's like anything. Is there truth to it? I mean, or is it just basically the ravings of a lunatic? I mean, I don't know. I keep an open mind because I do believe the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And you have to kind of sift through some of this stuff. Now, the idea that aliens came 300,000 years ago and seeded the planet and all this other stuff, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can go there right now. I'm more in the idea that we have that humankind developed all on its own.
Right.
I believe we've been here long enough where civilizations can rise and fall numerous times.
Yep.
And for whatever reason, we just keep getting knocked back into the Stone Age.
And see, I kind of think it's a little of both. I think we've been here way longer than we believe we've been here, but sometimes I think we do get help. Now, is it aliens or is it ourselves from the future or something? I don't know, but I still think we get help.
Well, we may have. I mean, we may have. We may have. I don't know. I do know that he was, after Chariots of the Gods came out, he was accused of stealing the ideas of a French author by the name of Robert Chariots. So he said in a 2004 article in Skeptic magazine, states that Von Däniken plagiarized many of the book's concepts from The Morning of the Magicians. That book was in turn heavily influenced by the Cthulhu mythos, which I think we all know about that one.
Yeah, that'd be fun to talk about.
and that the core of the ancient astronaut theory originates actually in H.P. Lovecraft's stories, The Call of Cthulhu, and At the Mountains of Madness. Boy, that brings back some memories.
Yeah, I actually haven't read all of that, and I really want to.
But whether Däniken's lying or not, I don't know. I
don't think he's lying. I just think this was his interpretation and him putting it down to get some self-explanation for himself, and it turned out to be good enough that people, they published it and made a movie within 2 years of it.
Yeah.
So somebody likes it. I enjoyed reading it when I was a bit younger, and it's fascinating stuff.
Yep.
Well, there are some. He's got. I'm telling you, he's got some. They have found. If you look at some of this ancient artwork, you see some of these statues that the ancients built. They sure look like aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
they really do. They don't look like they're humans at all. And what would possess them to make them?
Well, they only could do what they saw.
Right.
They didn't have that kind of an imagination. They put down what they saw. That was the whole point of their written culture, was to write down what they saw, heard, and that was it.
I don't. This is it's good stuff. The book is very in depth. There's a lot that it covers, and I urge people to check it out and, listen to it. And as I said, it's a lot of people have kind of seized upon this and have really kind of advanced it into the modern era.
Yep.
So, you could probably really just watch Ancient Aliens on the History Channel and probably get basically the meat of what Däniken had started.
That's what I was going to say. When you watch that show, they refer to him often.
Yeah.
They refer to him often. Right now, this is 2024. The book was written in 1968. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
That's not quite 60 years, right? Here we go with my brain damage again. But, that's, I'm 60. That would make it 56 years ago he wrote the book.
Yeah.
And there's no telling how long he was working on it before that. So I don't know. It's fun.
Yeah.
I love this subject. I love the fact that we're starting to tackle this kind of stuff on the show.
Yeah.
Because it's fun. And it stirs the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is, and it kind of makes you think. And look, I've always felt that I've always been open to the possibility of other life in the universe. I've never been one of these people to just be closed up and, that you can't, human beings are the only thing, and, God put us here and we're the only thing I'm just, I'm like, well, for your sake, I hope they never actually make themselves visible.
Yeah, because then the great filter comes into play.
Yeah.
Because I do believe for a lot of people it would be a complete mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It probably would be.
I think socially, I think
because then how do you
politically,
right? How do you put this now into my worldview of reality? That no, we're not the only things in this universe. There are other things that obviously a whole lot smarter, a whole lot more advanced. It may not necessarily smarter, more advanced, simply because their civilization has been around longer than we have. I mean, I venture to say, considering what we've accomplished,
right,
in the short period of time, advance us another 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
What we can accomplish. I'm a firm believer that in the next century,
in the next 3 years with AI, I'm scared for what's going to happen. Just in the next 3 years. I'm not even kidding.
Well, according to some
I'm just saying, like, that's what, like, as far as like right now in this current, like, talk about exponential growth of like technology and advancement and things like that, with how fast ChatGPT has come along and all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if the next 3 years we're singing a different tune.
Well, there's a lot of people seeing the alarm on that, but
yep.
I'm saying, I'd say by year 2100, I'm a firm believer that we'll be colonizing other worlds.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah.
It's not that far away.
No, I think the moon and Mars is
that's
definitely
what,
doable. They're planning on hitting Mars by 2035 to 2050.
Right. So I was saying by year 2100, it would not surprise me if we do have moon bases.
Yeah.
And
Mars
and
bases.
Mars and some sort of human settlement on Mars, and advance it out another 2200.
Yeah.
2300. That's what I'm saying. Another 1,000 years, if we make it, if the human race makes it that far. I mean, I would love to see what advances we have made as a species, where we're at, and what's kind of going on at that time. I mean, it's I do. I have great hope that eventually we will get past.
I think I may have talked about it in that Aliens episode Stoney was referring to, about how they land on the front lawn. I have a friend of mine and we've talked about this before. He was like, I really think the big thing that's going to unify humanity as a whole is some sort of exterior push, some sort of, like, the second we're no longer the only ones in the universe, the second that either aliens come and attack us or something happens where it's something outside of us, then I think humanity will all unify. I think there's still maybe, portions that are against each other, but the second that big us versus them in the humanity sense changes is once there's somebody else against us. But right now it's just going to be us versus each other, because that's all we have. That's the biggest threat, is just other humans on this planet.
Well, and there could be said, and I maybe they're leaving us alone.
Right.
Maybe they're waiting for us to get to a, I think Star Wars. I mean, not
Star Trek.
Star Trek. Really broached this idea that once we, develop the warp engine.
Yeah.
And
I think it's even a little bit simpler than that. The Calvin and Hobbes cartoon that used to be in the Sunday paper. There was one where Calvin is walking with Hobbes, his little tiger, and they're walking, and there's a tire on a rim, and there's some garbage all over the place, and there's a little pile of garbage. And Calvin looks at Hobbes and says, the surest proof that there's intelligent life up there is that it doesn't come down here.
Wow.
Because if we can't take care of our own planet, we're not smart enough to be dealing with them.
It was the prime directive, is what they call it.
Right.
In Star Trek, they have an idea of the prime directive of, like, that's every civilization that is, that can warp drive and can communicate with each other. They don't talk to primitive or less than civilizations that haven't developed the warp drive yet, because they don't want exterior motives to help push them. The civilization should evolve themselves into the ability of being cohesive enough to be able to discover that. And once they're able to, then they can join the group of all the rest of the societies. So they leave you be, and of course, if you end up killing each other before you get there, that's fine. We didn't interfere.
Now there is a train of thought that that actually these aliens are actually us.
Right.
Far advanced in the future.
Yeah.
I've heard that being put forward,
which is a cool concept.
That these aliens look the way they do different from us because of some disaster that happened.
Our evolution.
Right. That forced us to go underground and to live in and then we evolve differently than we look now. So I've seen that too.
Or just evolution, just pure evolution.
You know, another name that people throw out there as is the Anunnaki, and that's basically the gods, so to speak. I mean, you look at, as I said, you look at a lot of cave drawings, you look at a lot of figures. They're dressed in a certain way. They're depicted in a certain way. They're always carrying something, like they got something in their arm, like bringing a gift or something along those lines, or have a key or something along. I think there is definitely them showing something occurred where either aliens came or the remnants of a more advanced civilization were passing on knowledge to a more primitive, a primitive version of themselves. So
violating the Prime Directive.
Yeah, well, maybe they didn't think.
I know.
I guess when you're trying to recover from a disaster, it's you really can't do that. But I'm a firm believer that just based on what I've seen, read, what people have been talking about, encounters with alien beings, aliens have been coming here for a long time. Maybe they've already reached our government.
Right.
Maybe they're already talking to them.
How many people believe the men in black are real?
Well,
yep.
All you have to do is, just Google that. And there's people that believe the men in black are real, that are functioning government agency that are in communication with aliens in today's society.
Well, it would not surprise me that our government and all governments are in contact with
something. I agree.
What that is, I'll leave that to our listeners to kind of come up
for you to
come up on their own, because
and let us know what you think.
Yeah,
right. I mean, it's, as I said, check out the book. It's an interesting book.
It's a good read.
It's a good read.
It's a good read.
Like I said, for me specifically, like I said, once I framed my perspective, once I was able to empathize with the author a little bit, again, in this modern day and age, who I am as a person with my beliefs and understanding of science and all that, it was a bit hard for me to really wrap my head around some of the stuff that he was posing. But when I readjust my framework and I imagine it from his perspective in the time frame he was a part of, I'm able to understand it a little bit better. For me, so if you do go out there and listen to it, just maybe a little food for thought. But yeah, that was a fun read. It was interesting to talk about. And again, it's really cool because we've also been planting the seeds of this throughout the past episode.
We're going to do some more of these sort of topics. And there's a lot to go over. We try to keep these podcasts about an hour. These discussions could go for several hours. You really could. Keep an open mind.
Right.
And don't just close yourself off to other information.
I agree.
Because it might be something to really look at.
Right.
So we'll see.
Well, if you guys have any comments or suggestions, or if you want to try and relay your feelings and thoughts on these matters, you can go to our Facebook page /Retrospect Pod. We also have a YouTube channel as well at Retrospect Pod as well, where you can send out our little comments there if you want to. And we also have an email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, where you can send them more lengthy responses or suggestions or whatever you'd like.
And a website.
And a website as well.
Retrospectpodcast.com.
Right.
As we close today's episode, exploring Erich von Däniken's Chariots of the Gods, we are left with more questions than answers. Did ancient astronauts truly visit our ancestors, guiding them to achieve remarkable feats? Or do these theories merely reflect on the fascination of the unknown, a desire to explain the implicable through extraordinary means? What remains undeniable is the power of human curiosity and the quest for knowledge. Whether we look to the stars for answers or delve deep into our own past, it is the relentless pursuit of understanding that drives us forwards. So as you ponder the mysteries of our ancient history, remember the search for truth is a journey we all share. One transcends time and space. Stay curious, keep questioning, and join us next time as we continue to unravel the enigmas that shape our world.
Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. You're the best. Peace.